Thank you for joining us. As we mentioned, the Prime Minister is currently on a 10-day trip through Asia. Tomorrow, he will be at the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. He's also there to highlight Canada's upcoming Indo-Pacific strategy. Part of that, of course, how Canada will approach a more powerful China. Canada has already taken steps in recent weeks to limit China's involvement in key industries in this country. I spoke with the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Francois-Philippe Champagne, about that earlier. Minister Champagne, thank you for joining us from Whitehorse today. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, it's very good to be here. Actually, it's part of the country that I love very much. A bit chilly these days, but, Northern Light. There's a lot of good things going on here.
Yeah. I want to get right into it. Minister Joly gave some preview, I think it would be fair to say, of the Indo-Pacific strategy and policy that will be announced in the coming days. But you've been doing a lot of work sort of in and around that notion, particularly around resilient supply chains in China. You have said that we need to see a decoupling from China and regimes that don't share our values. How hard is that going to be? How hard are you finding it to be, given how much we have relied on China and its manufacturing in the past?
Well, it's clear that we're going to continue to export and import from China, but what I said is that we need to align closely with our American friends. Something is clear to me: we need to stop to be overly reliant on countries who don't share our basic values. And at a time where you talk to global CEOs and you see global supply chain becoming more regional, more emphasis on resiliency than pure efficiency, that plays very well to Canada. What I want to be is to be the green supplier of choice to our partners and allies around the world. That's why I was in Korea recently. Then I'm going to Korea. I was in Japan recently. I'm going back to Japan. Then I'll be in Germany. And I think our allies around the world, they see Canada as the place to be when it comes, for example, of sourcing critical minerals. When I was in Washington, I was talking to our U.S. friends, we need to do more on the CHIPS side, because if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act in the United States, in my view, this is all about resiliency. Yeah. And how we increase resiliency in North America is by working together. So my message to Washington is that Canada is the partner of choice if we want to be more resilient when it comes to our critical supply chains.
Well, let me ask you about that. Is it because of the United States and their approach to China that we are acting, or were we worried we were going to get left behind if we didn't make a dramatic shift in terms of how we were approaching global supply chains?
Well, I would say it's in Canada's best interest when it comes to, for example, the critical supply chain. Yes, I do believe that we need to be aligned with our U.S. friends. For me to increase resiliency, to be avoiding of being overly dependent on a few countries who don't share our basic values or basic principle when it comes to human rights, when it comes to labor law, when it comes to human dignity. I think this is in Canada's best interest. And I've been putting that vision that Minister Joly has laid out in action. We've been engaging very much with our partners in Japan. I'll be doing the same in South Korea. And you've seen what we've done with Germany by signing an MOU with Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz, which I think is going to lead to further investments in Canada.
Well, and I have some questions about electric vehicles, because I know you like talking about it.
Definitely. You should be with me on the road.
Let's talk about the critical minerals industry, because you've decided that you were going to require 3 Chinese businesses to sell their stake in Canadian firms. Should I interpret that then as an indication that you don't trust China, that you don't want them to hold those kinds of investment in this country, particularly for something that's so critical?
Well, I think what you should interpret is that I'm going to be protecting our national security. These investments go to a very rigorous process, and I think, my role, and I think this is widely shared by Canadians, is that we need to protect, for example, the critical minerals we have in Canada. We want to develop them, we want to refine them, we want to do that with partners and allies around the world, but we need to engage with companies who would want to take stake in these companies with eyes wide open. And that's why at the time I invoked national security to block these transactions. And, I will be looking at these transactions with enhanced scrutiny at every step of the way to make sure that these critical minerals, whether we're talking about lithium, we're talking about graphite, we're talking about manganese, we're talking about nickel, the type of things, Rosie, that are going to be powering our economy of the 21st century, we've been blessed by geography. So let's mine these critical minerals, let's refine them, let's add value in Canada. But I'm also mindful of, state-owned companies of different countries would want to take equity interest in our company, and I will apply enhanced scrutiny, and I will block any transaction that I don't find to be in the national security interest of Canada.
Should we expect more of that? Are you reviewing current deals to see whether there are other countries that you don't want to hold those kinds of investments?
I've said very openly that when it comes to state-owned enterprises who want to take stake in Canadian mining companies, when it comes to critical minerals, that in this case we would only approve them in exceptional circumstances. And I think this is what Canadians expect from us. It's about time that we put our foot down and make sure that these critical minerals are going to be, they're going to be mined and refined here in Canada with partners. And I'm going to be watching that very, very carefully, because this is the type of thing that's going to fuel the economy of the 21st century. We happen to have them in Canada. We need to protect them.
You were, as you said, the Minister of Foreign Affairs 5 years ago. You had a very different attitude towards China. You were interested in exploring free trade talks. Did the government have the wrong approach on China for too long, Minister?
Well, I would say China of 2015 and China of 2022 is very different. I think at the time, not only Canada, but I would say largely, if you look at the G7 and many countries around the world, there was a time where when China came to WTO, that there was a time where people were saying, further engaging with China. My view today is one which takes into account that obviously we're going to continue to export and import with China, but when it comes to critical supply chains, particularly when it comes to critical minerals, microchips, I think we need to engage with eyes wide open. And I think this is what this strategy is about: diversification. And I've been putting that strategy in action, honestly, because engaging further with South Korea, engaging more with Japan, engaging more with Germany, I think it's in Canada's best interest. This is looking at the long term. And I think these steps that we've been taking and what Minister Joly has laid out is really in line with what I feel when I'm talking to CEOs around the world. This is, supply chain are becoming more regional, more resiliency, and Canada shines in that. Why? Because stability, predictability, and the rule of law is in short demand, is in high demand and short supply. And Canada stands out in the world when it comes to that. So we've been able to attract investment. People are looking, for example, to talent. They're looking to the ecosystems that we have. They're looking critical minerals, renewable energy, and access to market. And that's our moment to shine. That's why I keep saying, let's be ambitious. Let's seize the moment. Everyone wants to come invest in Canada right now.
Well, let me end on one of your favorite topics anyway, one that you spend an awful lot of time on. You mentioned MOUs with Germany's Volkswagen and Mercedes on developing electric vehicle manufacturing in this country. You did go down to California, I believe, and have some talks with Tesla. That's one of the leading companies. You know how important it is to the system. Any inroads there with trying to get them to move up here as well?
You're well informed. Yes, I'm talking to everyone. You know me, Rosie. I'm not the type of guy to sit at my desk in an office. Business is going on around the world. I've been in Fremont. We've been talking to Tesla. We're exploring a number of different things with them. Again, I said very humbly, I said, consumers are going to move from an electric car to a green car. And I was making the point that Canada is the place to be. We're going to be producing green steel, green aluminum. I'm working on green batteries. I want to build green microchips. And my word, I keep saying to the people, not everyone wakes up in the world thinking about Canada. My job and our job is to make the case for Canada. And in this case, when I was in Fremont in California, was say, listen, the market is moving. I think now consumers, pension fund, financial institutions, they want to see a more decarbonized economy, and therefore moving from a pure electric car to a green car is the way to go. And I think in this sense, Canada offers everything that these big manufacturers would want. That's how we signed with Mercedes-Benz. That's what we've done with Volkswagen. And by the way, Rosemary, just to tell you, both Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen asked me to go present to their global board meeting in Germany to make the case for Canada. So what we've done is paying dividends, and I'm going to continue to fight at every step of the way. It's a very competitive world, but I think so far so good. We're going to have a full battery ecosystem. We're going to produce the car of the future right here in Canada, providing jobs for decades to come.
Okay, Minister, you are a busy, busy man, so thank you for making the time for us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me from the Yukon today.